Hi guys, my name is Luke, and today I'm joined by Dave Musson from Dave Reads King.
How's it going?
In this video, we're going to be talking about Firestarter, the original book, the '84 movie, and also the recent Zac Efron film. So before we jump into it, what are some of your thoughts on the book and both the movies?
Yeah, the book is one that I think has got better for me each time I've reread it. So I reread it in preparation for these movies coming out, which was the third time I read it.
Okay.
And it's definitely crept up my rankings each time. I think I really like the fact that we drop in straight in the action. They're on the run at the start.
Yes.
I love the character of Charlie. I think Rainbird's a great character. And I think that what's great about it is the paranoia. Like it's something that was really present across a lot of King's early work, that he's sort of mellowed out with time, but like this is like peak King paranoia here. And I think it works really well for him. So yeah, I think it's one that definitely benefits from a reread. I think you get more out of it the more times you go back to it. You get more from the relationship between Charlie and Andy. You get more of a sense of how scary the shop is as well. So yeah, I enjoyed it. How about you? Have you reread it like in preparation for this?
I've only read it once, and that was a few months ago. But like you said, I really like that the opening scene. It just throws you right into the action, and you kind of figure out the stories you go along through like flashbacks, and I really like it. Sort of a mix between Carrie and the Institute. How like we have like this organization that's manipulating these people with these powers, and there's a little girl who's kind of figuring everything out. And I really like that ending, especially. Very explosive. Yeah. And so the original, the '84 movie with Drew Barrymore is very, very similar to the book. Like the opening scene is basically beat for beat the same.
Really, again, I rewatched it last week. So the night before I went to see the new one, I rewatched the original just to see. And yeah, it's very faithful to the book. It was probably, having just finished my reread the night before, I hadn't really appreciated quite how close to the book that '84 version is. I mean, the dialogue is pretty much all lifted from the page. And yeah, I think there's some nice bits in the '84 film that I really thought were sort of subtly done, but very well done. Like when you see the McGee's at home and there's just a fire extinguisher in every room. I thought that was really subtle. And the scene where the government agents in their fireproof suits come out of the woods at the lakeside lodge, I thought was a really effective shot. I think for me, like I think there are a couple of things that obviously it was done in the '80s, and like a lot of the technology probably has aged not brilliant. Although I thought it was an enjoyable film, but I thought the fact that Andy has to go like this to do his work. And there's that scene where the agents just hold his arms back and he can't do anything. And it's like, yeah, you sort of tripped yourselves up there. Like he didn't need to do that.
Yeah.
And I think something else that was missing from both films, actually, it's probably one of my favorite elements of the book, is how Andy's power sets off echoes and ricochets that just bounce around people's heads and make them go crazy. I mean, my favorite scene in the book is Herman Pinchot committing suicide. Obviously, they're not going to put that gruesome a scene in the film, but because that all stemmed from these thoughts just pinging around in his head, and I guess it's too internal to capture really well on film. But it was almost a shame that they were so faithful to the book elsewhere that they couldn't weave that in, because I think what you do get from the '84 version is you get a very clear sense that the shop is bad and the shop is doing bad things and is trying to spin the truth. And you get a real sense of the panic and the danger that Andy and Charlie feel. I think that comes across really, really well. And then, I mean, Drew Barrymore's just great, isn't she? I mean, what was she, like,
absolutely.
7, 8 years old in that? And she is thoroughly convincing and thoroughly terrifying as well.
For sure. Yeah, like you said, that I didn't even think about it, but you're right, that echo thing, that which is a big part towards the second half of the book was kind of not in the movie. They did have that little bit with the snakes, but it was mostly omitted from the final film. But yeah, the actors are really good in it. I feel like there's a lot of character stuff that was kind of brushed over in the movie, but the story's mostly there. They just kind of skipped over a lot of the more development, I guess, which I would have liked more of because the actors are great.
Yeah, and the score is fantastic in there. I mean, both movies benefit from an amazing score, but like that Tangerine Dream one from the original is just stunning.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's talk about the new movie. What are sort of your overall thoughts about it?
So I mean, it's one of those, like, I was quite hesitant going into seeing it because the reviews I'd seen were not exactly glowing. And I feel like the King adaptations of the last few years, I've generally come away feeling a bit let down by them. So I was probably going in with quite low expectations. So actually, halfway through the film, I was like, this is really good. Like, I really enjoyed the time that they took to show us that family dynamic and give us some more time with Vicky as well, and get a sort of fresh take on Charlie's powers and how she's trying to cope with it, and showing her in normal situations as well. And I thought it was really well paced, really good atmosphere, and was building perfectly. But then the second half of it, I think there were some really good ideas there. But because they seemed determined to cram this film into 90 minutes, there just wasn't enough time to explore those ideas properly. And I think the ending, ultimately, again, an interesting idea, but it didn't feel earned because we didn't. I don't know about you, but like the shop, I had no idea if the shop was good or bad or not. I had no idea who to believe on the shop. I had no idea of the motivations of Rainbird, although he was, I liked the twist that they put with him having powers, and I thought it was an interesting take on him. But again, everything in that second half felt so rushed, and there were so many nubs of ideas that could have been really cool. All it needed was another 30 minutes. And I think it would have really elevated the film. But yeah, so I kind of I went to see it in theaters, and I sat there when the credits were rolling. And I was just like, I was the last person in the theater. I was just frowning at the screen and just going, what? What? What happened? What? I just, it's a real shame because it was moving along nicely to be a really effective adaptation, and a really original one as well. I mean, how about you? How did you find it?
Yeah, so I was surprised at first because it didn't start out the way I thought it would, and I think going into it thinking about it as like judging it based on the faithfulness of its adaptation is maybe not the best idea with this one, because it does a lot different, especially in like the first act of the film, because there isn't really a whole lot of flashback except for this opening credits, which I really liked. Yeah, but like you mentioned, Vicky's still alive. They're just kind of hanging out. I'm not sure where that is, but there's like a house in the woods. And then Rainbird shows up, and they basically changed his character completely from the book.
Yeah,
because he was more he didn't have any powers in the book. He was just a regular assassin, but he was very cunning and sort of conniving, I guess, if you will. But in this, he's more just like, I've heard people compare it to the Terminator, which I kind of I can see that. But yeah, it took me a while to kind of like, this is different than the book, and that's okay. But then eventually I started to getting into it, and I really liked that middle part. But I kind of lost me at the end, I think.
Yeah, and like with Rainbird, like with him having the powers, I thought that was a neat twist, and I got really excited when we first saw Rainbird, because like that first shot where we see his apartment, and just it seemed to be the things that they did pick from the book were really small details that the other film doesn't. So like when we see his line of shoes, that's quite a big thing in the book, that he's got this shoe collection. I was like, okay, we're in this. These people know this character. And I thought Michael Greyeyes was amazing in the
Oh
role as
yeah,
well.
for sure.
But yeah, just the way his, again, it was just that rushed ending,
Mhm.
because like when he turns up right at the very end, like what are they doing there? Are they taking a stand against the shop? Are they setting up a sequel? Like
Yeah.
what's the end game with that? I just, that's the bit that lost me somewhat.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's just I think that's the frustration with this, because there was so many good ideas and so many
Hmm.
interesting stuff. And like you say, the opening credits with the experiments were great. Like the
Right.
eyeball on the floor, thought
Yeah,
that was a lovely touch.
for sure.
And I think Ryan Kira Armstrong was great as Charlie. I
Mm.
thought Zac Efron
Yeah.
was really good as well. So yeah, it's just like, what could have been. I think
Hmm.
that's the big takeaway I had from it.
Yeah. Another really big difference with this new movie is that it focuses more on the powers. I don't
Mm,
really think that the book wasn't really about that, and I feel like with Stephen King in general, like with The Shining or Carrie in the Institute as well, it's not really like they have supernatural abilities, but they're not really considered powers, so to speak. Like
mm,
they're big, they're burdens, and I feel like this movie kind of takes it in a different direction. I've heard it compared to like the X-Men or something like that, where it's like almost a superhero movie, but not quite. And so I feel like maybe the ending was like setting up some kind of like dynamic duo thing. I don't really know.
mm.
Because they both have superpowers, and so maybe I don't know. I have no idea where the ending was going.
Yeah, it felt very origin story, didn't it?
For sure.
And like the little things like the agents putting the contact lenses in as
Yeah.
being their way of stopping it. It was just like, that's not like you say, that's not what this sort of movie is. It
Right.
just felt an odd choice.
Hmm. Yeah, but the John Carpenter score is maybe my favorite part about the new movie. It's really
Mm,
good. I'm definitely gonna be listening to that sometime soon.
yeah, for sure. And it's so really atmospheric and
Mm,
dark and
yeah,
driving, wasn't it? It's really, yeah, really
absolutely,
effective.
absolutely. If you were in charge of adapting the Firestarter, what would you do? Like, what were some things you would make? What were some things you maybe add or take away?
Oh, that is a good question. I mean, if we're sort of, if we're taking all shackles off and
Mhm.
doing exactly what we want,
Yeah.
the Pinchot arm in the garbage disposal scene, I would
Okay.
I would definitely include that, and I would find a way of showing that ricochet thing and building
Hmm.
that into what happens with Cap as
Yeah.
well, and all of those kind of things, because I think that does add an extra layer to it. And
Hmm.
the I think what was missing from this one was
Hmm.
the time spent in the shop and seeing the
Yeah.
experiments, and I think that's where the 84 one benefits.
Hmm.
So I would definitely make more of that, and more of Andy hiding his ability from everyone
Yeah.
and plotting and
Hmm.
doing that kind of stuff. Um, and I think, yeah, I think I just want to make it feel more paranoia
Hmm.
driven,
Yeah.
and I'd take away that sort of origin story element.
Right.
So I think it's almost like finding a balance between the two adaptations that are out there now, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
But how about you? What would you do differently?
Yeah. One of the things I really liked about the book is the sort of complexity of the shop. Like in the new movie, they just kind of like a cement cell, but in the book, they have
Mm,
like their own apartments with their own TVs and books and stuff. And it's not necessarily like all evil all the time. I thought that was really interesting. Um, I really like the new actor for Rainbird, but I like what they did with the character in the original. So
mm.
like just take the actor and put him in the old movie, I guess. Yeah, like
It's something
yeah.
else I would definitely include in
Mhm.
the experiment scenes. I think one of the most vivid scenes in the book is the guy clawing his eyes out, but slamming that mark
Right.
on the screen above him, and it being, I think it's a comma shape, isn't it?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and going back the next day and seeing that,
Hmm.
and then going back again the day after that, and it's all been cleaned up. Like
Yeah.
little bits, like little details like that are so good.
Hmm.
And I wouldn't spend too much time on it, but I think in the early
Yeah.
part of an adaptation, it would benefit massively from it, because again, you need to show what a scary force
Hmm.
this
Hmm.
agency is. And I think, like
Yeah.
like we were saying, I think that was definitely lacking in this one, which was a shame.
Hmm. Yeah, and kind of going off of that, I feel like a big thing that was missing, especially from the beginning of this new movie, was a lot of those flashbacks to their college days and the that experiment um, in itself. I feel like a big part of the beginning of the book was kind of focused on that. I would have liked to see more of that in this new movie.
What did you make of it in this one that Andy and Vicky basically already, it was hinted that they already
Yeah,
had these powers before the experiment. Like I couldn't tell whether we were supposed to take from that they were already being watched and they were selected deliberately, or
hmm,
whether it was just coincidence, or whether it was just
right.
one of the many things in this new film that doesn't really get explained. Like there's that,
Mhm.
and there's Andy McGee not actually being his real name and stuff. But yeah,
Right.
that idea of them having powers beforehand, I didn't quite know what to make of
Mm. I think for me, it's kind of brings it back to the institute where they already have powers, but they're sort of like making them more powerful, I
that.
guess. Yeah, because it doesn't really make sense if they already have powers and you're giving them drugs to give them more powers. I'm not really sure. It sounds redundant to me almost. Um, but yeah, I guess they would just be like expanding upon the powers that were already there, maybe. Also, I'm not
Yeah.
really sure how Rainbird fits into all of that because in the novel, it was the college students were their first and I believe their only experiment with Lot 6.
Yeah.
But for this, it implies that there were earlier experiments. And so then I'm not really sure why they would then move to college students.
Yeah, either that or it was done on random shop agents. But yeah,
Yeah.
again, like just give yourselves another 30 minutes and
Hmm.
explain these
Yeah,
things a bit more, and
absolutely.
then we can get more from it.
Right. Yeah. So overall, I thought it was fine. A lot of people are saying it's one of the worst adaptations of King, but I don't think it's quite that bad.
No,
Um,
no.
I think the 84 movie is probably better. Which version do you prefer?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of either. I
Yeah,
I think it depends. I think objectively, as a judging its success as a movie, the
mhm,
84 one probably wins it
right,
because it just has that extra bit of runtime. It feels a bit more cohesive from start to
mhm,
finish. We don't have as many questions at the end.
right,
It's such a shame though, because this one feels like it could have
yeah,
taken that spot if it had had a bit more faith in itself, I
mhm,
think.
mhm,
I
yeah.
guess I guess you plump for the 84 one as well.
Yes, I do. I do. There were some elements I really liked about this new one, but like you said, they're just not fully realized enough. I would have liked to maybe a bigger budget, a longer runtime probably would have benefited this movie quite a bit.
For sure, for sure. Hey, guess we'll just have to keep our fingers crossed for Salem's Lot that
Yeah,
one is
for
the one
sure.
to kick things back into life.
Yeah, it's written and directed by the guy who wrote the screenplay for It Chapter 2. So
Mm,
I mean that for me that's good news. Some people didn't like that movie, but I kind of enjoyed it. Um, but yeah, we'll have to see.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, thank you for joining me. Where can people find you?
So if they just search for Dave Reads King on YouTube, you'll find me, and I'll probably be giving you 19 reasons to read a particular book. Um, so yeah, come and say hi.
Very cool. I will put the link in the description for that. And thank everybody for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Peace.